Hi, welcome back. So today we're going to look at a very interesting way of making textures with Substance Designer. This is a technique that I haven't really seen anywhere else, and I would have to say it's probably a technique that I mostly developed. It involves creating stamp height maps and splattering them around inside the Substance Designer inside the tile space. And with that, I can make a very interesting, a varied, a, a rock formations or anything for that matter with any of these stamps. It's a very interesting workflow, and I hope you dig it. And let's get to it. These kind of stamps that you see here, which is already a stone shape generator, and with this I can make various different kind of stones. If you see down here with the 3D view, I'm using right now in default in the edit view, I'm using the material for displacement. So tessellation, and I have my height map, creating my normal map, and this is the tool that will drive the look for the rest of the stone generator. Now let me go back to just some reference that I gathered up. It's common to see this in games all over the place, having these kind of like pebbly stone textures and materials. And in some cases, I just don't feel like placing all these little stones and bits. And sometimes placing these stones and bits it takes too long, while also being hard to get right. Sometimes a procedural way of placing them is a lot better and a lot more natural. So things like these guys in here by Yannick Gumbert, and all these other pebbly like materials could be essentially made procedurally. This one's by an artist in Naughty Dog, Genesis Prado. He's about the most amazing texture artist I've probably ever met. His attention to detail, color, and variance is just amazing to see. It's amazing to see how he works and how cleanly he gets the shapes and reads. It's really inspiring seeing all his textures. And looking at these rock formations, we kept studying them and tried to get just a stone generator that would get some of these kind of random bits, as well as looking at some other artists. So looking at all this little bits and pieces, it started to grow with the idea, and the first real kind of generator that grew was a Pebble Generator, and making a single rock that could get procedurally make several of them with one gen. Let's go back to Substance here. So you see this rock generator here, and it has quite a bit of parameters, and all these parameters are inside. If you saw my previous overview, you saw how I blend together height information, topology information to get the best result. And this is really the key factor of getting a really nice normals and having a really deep control for your height topology. In this case, making a shape, a stamp that I can place and make a procedurally generated stone. So you see I have shape sizes. I can rotate it around and you'll see how it affects and then the gradient. So you start to figure out, well, so many different variations that can be created with just a few parameters. And this this rock was made to be more of a semi-chiseled rock with some clear faces, almost giving that ZBrush look of using the trim dynamic tool or the flatten tool to get those clear reads, clear faces. It has way more properties, and you see this one's like a histogram scan cut. Basically it's a gradient, then when placed on top it starts to cut the face of the stone. If I take that away and move it up, you'll see that this is the original stone structure, and really what it's doing, if you were to see the action of the gradient, if I bring it down, it would literally just be cutting it, because the gradient goes from probably from like a white point to a black point here. So I'm using it as kind of like a height, and it lowers down. As it lowers down, it starts cutting down into the stone. So looking back and forth, if you look at on top of this piece and we go back to some reference rocks back here, you'll start to notice it starts creating some of the smaller shapes like so. And this is all procedural. There's no ZBrush in here. It's all done through height modifications and topology blending. Very simple blends. It multiplies, adds, subtracts, and mins and max. And what you get is you can go to a result that looks similar like this. Let me make sure to get the proper shader on. So let me make this larger so you can see. So it's all these little stones that have been placed, and this is the normal. Of course it starts looking a little generic, but this can be tweaked to make it look better. Let me show you some examples of a better looking stone using the same exact yeah, I'm looking for the folder here. Okay. That's my folder for an hour a day. It's more like 3 hours a day of work. So every day or every few days I want to do some work. So I started doing this Pebbles, and this was the first example of a pebbly rock. This is using the same rock, just placed better, tweaked better to get the best results. These are other variations of the rock, small little pebbles, medium-sized pebbles to small, some rounded, more kind of cartoony or flat-faced pebbles. Then this is a very kind of crunchy pebble, and that's just a different project entirely. And these ones were a slightly older version of the rock shape, and also with mud. This was a previous tutorial overview and gave an overview of this kind of mud structure. This one's rendered in Marmoset. Let's go back to substance. So I won't go through this material just yet of how it's constructed, but I'll give just a quick glance. So basically what I do is I bring in my shapes. There's the base shape, and these ones have been all of these are exactly the same as this guy. It's just been edited differently, and then I run them through splatter. Let me make this larger for you guys. So I run it through splatter several times, and then I start stacking them together. And you see how very little gain height information there is in there. That's because I tweaked them to make sure that I was getting all of them in the correct height, and they just blended into each other like so. And that's how I composited all these rocks into one pass. I leveled it there, and then I finally made my normal, and on top of here I did my ID composites, which is just grabs what the stones are, so I can composite the colors I want. I composite them through, and I get this. It's a ramp gradient, some AO to blend in some dirt, some colors, and then I reach to here. Oh yeah, by the way, that's the only reason I did that is because we don't have shadows inside substance, and I just wanted to see some kind of shadow representation. That's actually not the end texture. The end texture would be pretty much this. So what we're actually going to show you here is how to make this guy, this little rock, a procedural bit. And basically it all starts off in here. This is the rock generator. As you see, it's pretty simple. It's very basic blends with exposed parameters and with just one output. It starts off with a polygon, a gradient, a cloud, and a crystal, and another cloud. So let me go through an overview of what's going on. The polygon is overlaying on top, is blending, multiplying on top with the gradient linear. But the gradient linear is going into a splatter. Now the splatter, what it's doing is making sure that it's a pattern pivot to center, and they're all the gradients causing the pyramid effect inside. Now the reason I did this is because I wanted to get some irregular shapes within the boundaries. So I'm able to edit this to get some kind of like offset flaking going on. And when I multiply it on top of this, I get extra control. So with the splatter and the polygon, I get extra control. That's why inside the nodes here, you see shape 1 and shape 2 and different kinds of sides. I'm going back to the shape. This set to multiply, and then another multiply. It's basically some gradients in there. Then there's blur to gray to min, and what's going in here is you can't really see it because it's been preset to be white. It's actually a gradient. It's actually bringing in this gradient, and this is what's causing the height cut. The ones that cuts the stone from the top. And with this, it's the exposed parameters for position and contrast, and also invert position has been exposed. And this one is multiply. It is blended with opacity 1 to min. And this one's a directional warp, just to give it some kind of a natural erosion effect, and it's driven by the cloud too. And here we have multiply and some more sloping and some more directional warps, just to give it a little bit more of a natural feel. And that's tweakable inside, and all these parameters are exposed. This one is a cavity, and basically I wanted to mimic kind of like the edges being chipped away. So I used curvature node, and so I created a normal in here, and then I ran it through the curvature, which does this down here, grabs all the edges and the peaks and the valleys. And then I ran it through levels just to get the peaks, and then I did blend, subtract, and then I ran it through a histogram, a scan, which I'm using as a height balance with the position. I only expose the position because that's the only way to get to make sure to have one property that make sure that I can push the histogram to be the full range. Just like the previous overview, I was talking about full range, and at one point in your graphs you want to have some kind of control, and that's the way to control it outside this graph in an exposed parameter. Then I finally did a levels cutout, and this cuts out the rock of where I wanted. I left a little feathering. You could be a lot tighter with this, but for this case that's how it was, and I multiplied that on top, and then it's just output. So I'm actually gonna experiment and kind of run this with you. So I'm going to make a new stone. So I'm going to make a new substance here. Relative. And I'm just going to kill most of these. And just leave one that's... Actually, I'll have a normal. I'll have height. Actually, I already have one open here. I'll just do it in here. There you go. That way I can use this one as a little bit of a reference. Oh. Let me copy all of those over again. The two shapes, the gradient and the poly. That's odd, it's not letting me copy. Okay. well, we can do without that. Let's do polygon, and we have two types of polygons. And let's do gradient linear, and let's bring a splatter circular. And here's a splatter circular. Let's start with the splatter circular. Let's connect the gradient to the splatter circular. And let's make sure that it's receiving the input of the image and image entry pattern. And then let's make sure that the numbers are set to 4 so we can see what we're doing. And then center orientation. So you see how now they're centered to orient, but they're not going to be facing the correct side. So I'm going to do pattern size. I'm getting some kind of weird pattern there. And now what we need to do is get a translate. I want to rotate by 90 degrees. And now you see it's starting to create some kind of shape in the interior. So now I'm playing with the pattern size to get some kind of patterning inside the bit. I'm putting it to max. And now I have a pyramid in there. Now you see that I rotated here, and now you're seeing these kind of overlapping. The reason that's happening is because we have it set to tile. So here's a pro tip when it comes to these kind of things. You can always make sure that it doesn't tile. So you can go to absolute and make no tile. And then suddenly those are off. So now I can extend the boundaries even more. So the whole image is taken. And I said before that you can overdrive parameters. So now we have a gradient value making a pyramid. Now let me rotate this 180. Let's see what happens. Oop, they didn't like that. Let's just leave it to there. And I'm just increasing the radius. And now I'm going to do pattern size random. See what that does. Pattern scale. And centering. So now you see what's going on. By increasing the numbers, you're starting to see these segments. So you're not getting just circular, you're getting some kind of random shapes in there. The problem with this is that it's inverted information. We want the height information to be the white topmost in the middle and go to gradient black at the sides. So now we need an invert. So grab an invert grayscale and place it in. Now it's inverted. And now what we need is levels. Let's do auto level for now. Now you start seeing some interesting shaping in there. Now let me put this with the normal and the height. And let me go back to the proper shader of tessellation. And let me raise the scale up. So when doing these kind of shapes, I usually use tessellation shader just to see what's going on in a 3D way. So basically I'm building up the detail. In this case right now I have some kind of shard looking bit coming out. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this. Actually, I'm going to go back here, grab a shape, grab a bell. I'm just going to test out how the bell looks in 3D. Maybe not the bell, maybe perfect. That's exactly what I want. I want something that's more of a roundish shape. We're making a totally different rock than this guy, the old guy. So let me just duplicate that over here. Let's do a blend. Blending it into this guy here. Let's do a multiply. Let's see what happens with this. So not necessarily what I wanted. I do see a round bit there, so it is clamping down the area. What I wanted more so was try to force the roundness of this. So I think what I'm going to do is do a copy. And you see now the shape's a little rounder. Try doing this. .75. See how it looks as a normal. Okay. 0.5. Let's do that's kind of cool. Max lighten, max darken, Let's stick with the max lighten for now. Let's see where we go with that. Let's do a blend. I'm actually going to do the blend here and here in between because I want this one to come on top of this guy. That way, when I'm making rotational shapes and adding sides, it also affects the top of this. And you start getting some interesting different breakups going on. You see, just tweaking, I'm able to get some variance in stone structures there. Just did a quick outer level just to see how it was going. And now at this point what I do, just to test it out further, is do levels. Sorry, I'm supposed to add a blend in between. And add this level, and then connect this back to the normal and to the height. And this one is going to be set to multiply. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because I want to just clamp the shape down where okay. So now I have this, and now I'm going to use histogram scan. Oh, graph's getting bigger. Bring up the position. Yeah, just clamped it down to the edge, because this one needed a little bit of clamping. So now we have our most basic rock. And here we go. Let's test it out. So 3 sides versus splatter circular. How many numbers? Just a few. I'm already getting some interesting effects in there. Go back to position. Clamp it down. And there you go. I have my stone piece. Now let's add more detail onto this piece. Let's bring this back here. If you press D on the keyboard, it snaps other nodes into into your nodes. They have to be singularly connected, so it can't have multiple connections. In this case, levels will always go into there. So that's the quick note. And now let's do some detailing on this rock. So one thing I like to use is directional warps. So here's a directional warp. Put in the input, and then you can, just to see what's going on with this, you probably put that in too, and then start warping it directionally by itself. Now, why did I do that, you're asking? Why by itself? Well, because by itself, it's causing shapes like this. It's basically using the same height information and saying, I'm going to push it in the direction of the slopes. So now I'm getting this kind of like, you know, push going on this way. And that's cool for getting kind of more organic shapes. So usually before I expose it, I just find something that's reasonable, like 10, just so it gives it a little bit of a natural shape, but it's not killing the rock. And then what I start doing is finding some noises. So in this case, I'm going to find, let's try plasma. Let's do a warp, another warp, using, I need to connect this to the top and this guy to the bottom. See what happens with that. And now you saw the effect. So now it's starting to even get more organic in there. Maybe even like shards. So combine with that, with both of them, you start getting some really, really interesting effects, much more natural. Now let's try to add some surface detail on this. So let's do a slope. Slope blur. So with slope blur, what it does is if you grab some noise, let's say this, and you run this guy on the grayscale on top with the slope being the rock, what it starts doing is sloping all this information of the noise down. What's really cool about this is that you can get some interesting erosion effects. You have to bring the samples up, bring the intensity down a little bit. You can choose blur. You start getting some nice lines, or you can start using min. This looks more like dirt creeping down. Now since I got this already, what's cool about it is that I can layer it on top. When I make a blend, and put it on top of this guy. So this one's going to be on the top on the foreground, this one's going to be on the bottom. And now my height's going crazy, and probably my normal's like, it's going pretty crazy too. Let's set it to multiply. pretty crazy still, pretty noisy. Let's do just a small amount. Even a smaller amount. Just to get a slight surface. So see, now you're getting a slight surface detail going down. Now let's do let me get some other ones. What's cool about this is that you can really now just test it out. See, I kind of like that a little bit better. It's giving a little bit more of a natural effect. Sloping down nice, it's giving nice detail, it's still pretty big, it's not so grainy. Yeah, I'll stick with this guy. Now let's do just a warp. So now let's use a warp. And I'm going to actually use it before it gets into the slope. So I'll put the input, put the output in there, and I'm going to put the gradient. Let me add another noise. Let's try this. No, that's not giving the effect I want. Let's try Perlin noise. Just like I need a larger one. That's interesting. Okay. Now let's do blend. Kind of when I get a little bit of this cloud 1 grid onto this noise, just to break it up just a little bit, not that much, just a little bit. Alright, so now we have a pretty good looking rock. Just organizing the graph a little bit. I think I want to add that gradient cut. Now I want to bring a splatter. I'm going to insert the gradient. Pattern size, make them 2. Actually, 2, 1. Oh, okay. Yeah, I have to set the grid number really low, and now I can do the pattern size. Okay. Seems like 100 by 100 is good. Now let's do rotation. So here's the same issue. We're getting the tile issue. So make sure to put the absolute, but no tile. Doesn't seem to be doing it. Okay, no matter. What I'll do instead is do blur. And I'm blurring it enough so at least, even if it has irregular sides, it'll maintain a gradient. And I want to make sure the quality is all the way up, because it has to be nice 16-bit and good drop off. So I'm thinking of putting it before the histogram cut in there. So I'll move this out of the way. And I want to blend this, this, and add this, and add max lighten. Nope, min darken. Yeah, min darken did it. So now I have a shard created by this gradient that I can use with the splatter tool and rotate as I please. So I'm just trying to find a good setting for this ramp so it gives good natural shapes without killing the height. Okay, so now rotating, testing it out. Now what I need is another histogram scan. Attach it to the blend. Organize my shaping here. And now I can use the histogram scan to cut down my rock from the top. And I can add contrast to give it a slope. I'm not happy with this gradient, so I think I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to do a translate. I want to connect the gradient and take off splatter. I'm just going to use it translate as my rotating tool. It'll be a little limiting, but at least I'll know it's 100%. And make sure to have my histogram scan plugged into there. And then test it out. See, now it's a much better, harsher angle than before. More control on the fine-tuning of that angle. The only difference is that with this, I only have a little bit of control with 90 degrees. You get some really interesting results. Okay. Now move it so it's all at one. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it at 1. That's default value. 0.5. What's 0.5? Yeah, I'll leave it at 0.75, so it gives a nice look to the rock. So that'll be my default value. Now, make sure to have a histogram scan in the back. Let's always set that at 0.5. Now my rock is tweakable. for the height information. And if it happens to clamp out with all these presets, this property will be exposed for the height balance. Let's look at back to the other graph and see what we're missing. So I have height balance, I have warp details, I have my rock modification areas with some noises, but we don't have the cavity. I'm going to see if I can get a better result than I did here. Well, let me go back to the example. Make sure to save. Let's do a cavity. So let's bring out curvature. And using a curvature, and let's get normal. Actually, just right click, add normal. And grab the normal from here. Actually, I already had a normal map. That's fine. And connect it to your curvature. Make sure normal map is at a good range. And now the curvature is all over the place. Let's see. Even with DirectX. So it's because it has a lot of grain in the information and the normal. So what I do here is I actually bring it back before all the warp information right at the histogram, just to get the peak angles. So you see I got the nice white clean angles that I want. So now let's use the levels. If I go level that off, now I have clean white cavities. Now let's do a blur. I'm exchanging the blur into the curvature and then the levels. Just want to see if I can get a more finer clamping on the cavity with some of the softness. Okay, so I have this guy. Now what I'm going to do is blend it on top of here, which is almost about the end. Now let's head to multiply. That didn't work so well, and the reason it's not working so well is because one of these warps is causing the shape to move. So there you go. Now I have a cavity sticking out. I use subtract, and now I have the ridges having a little bit of a cavity break, giving a little bit more of that kind of shipped away a bit. This is really just sculpting with heights. Sure enough, making one of these rocks would probably be a lot quicker in ZBrush. But once I made this one generator, I just made probably an unlimited version of this rock. I mean, I can create so many variations. So I'm not just creating one rock here, I'm creating so many more. So now we have the rock is done. So I'm going to stop here since it's already an hour's time, and we'll come back to how we expose the parameters for this rock and make it functional. It's really pretty easy. It's just going into all these properties and going to expose parameters and finding the ones that really work to get the different shapes and doesn't break the graph or the shape output. And in most cases it's just going back and forth and making sure that everything's good. As you see, when I go back into the stone shape 2, all the parameters have been exposed and they're all on the right side. So I usually try to keep it pretty simple with generator shape 1, with generators as the main node structure, and that's very important because you want to have one area that basically entails what all the properties are. And then I have my height histogram scan, which is my balance, and there's also part of the generator stuff, generator stack. And in between that I have other groups called shape 1, shape 2, the cut, soft cavity, and warp noises. And really how you name them is mostly your choice. I tend to try to follow the exposed parameters that come with it. And that's pretty much just the general overview and the making of this one rock. We'll come back and I'll do the expose stuff. Alright, see you then.